I spent more than 40 years standing on a college basketball sideline, and in that time I watched the game change right in front of me. I saw it become faster, taller, stronger, and more demanding than the one I first learned in Kansas. People remember the championships at Kentucky, and they should because winning mattered to me. But winning also taught me how difficult it is to recognize greatness in an opponent. I never gave praise cheaply. A great player had to force you to change your practice, your defense, and sometimes your whole way of thinking. He had to perform when every seat was full and every man in the building wanted him to fail. Over the years, I saw hundreds of gifted young men, but only a few could control a college game completely. These are the five greatest college basketball players I ever saw. The first college player I have to talk about is Jerry West. When I first watched him at West Virginia, he did not look like the sort of young man who was going to overwhelm a gymnasium with size or power. He was lean, quiet, and almost severe in the way he carried himself, but once the ball was in his hands, the whole floor seemed to tighten around him. West had that rare gift of making a difficult shot look like the shot he had been waiting for all evening. He could rise from the middle of the floor, stop on balance, shoot over a defender, or drift toward the baseline and still put the ball exactly where he wanted it. What impressed me most was not simply that he scored. Plenty of boys could score when the game was loose. West scored when the defense knew he was going to shoot, when the clock was running down, and when every possession carried the weight of the season. In 1959, he took West Virginia all the way to the NCAA championship game against California. They lost by 1.7, 1-70, but West scored 28 and was named the most outstanding player of the Final Four. I have always believed that award told the truth about him. He was the best player in the building, even though he did not leave with the trophy. Coaches remember players like that because they ruin ordinary plans. You could not guard West with one simple instruction. If you crowded him, he would put the ball on the floor. If you backed away, he would shoot over you. If you sent help, he understood where the open man would be before the defense completed the rotation. I would have spent practice making him work before he ever received the ball because once he caught it in rhythm, the defense was already in trouble. Even then, I suspect he would have found some narrow angle we had failed to close before night ended. He was also a better rebounder than people expected from a guard, and that mattered because he did not wait for the game to come back to him. He went and took another possession. There was a seriousness about him that I respected. He did not perform for the crowd. He did not need to talk his way into importance. He looked like losing offended him personally, and I understood that feeling. A coach could build around a player who treated every mistake as something that had to be corrected immediately. West was not the biggest man I ever saw, and he was not the most physically astonishing, but he may have been one of the most complete backcourt players college basketball produced in my lifetime. He could score, pass, rebound, defend, and carry the emotional burden of a team without making a show of it. I place him fifth only because the four men ahead of him changed the physical or tactical shape of the game in even larger ways. But when a game became close, when the noise grew louder and the choices became fewer, Jerry West was usually the calmest man on the floor, and that is one of the highest compliments I can give any player. The next college player I have to talk about is Wilt Chamberlain. I knew what Kansas basketball meant because I had come through that tradition myself, and when Wilt arrived in Lawrence, every coach in the country understood that something new had entered the game. He was not merely tall. We had seen tall boys before. Wilt was tall, powerful, quick, coordinated, and far more agile than a man his size had any right to be. He could run the floor, elevate above the rim, recover on defense, and reach passes that looked safe when they left a guard's hands. In his first varsity game for Kansas in 1956, he scored 52 points and grabbed 31 rebounds against Northwestern. Those numbers were not a warning, they were an announcement. Coaches immediately had to reconsider what was possible inside a college basketball game. The problem with preparing for Wilt was that every sensible plan created another weakness. If you played behind him, he caught the ball too close to the basket. If you fronted him, one proper lob could end the possession. If you sent two or three defenders, Kansas could find the open man. And if you tried to wear him down physically, you discovered that Wilt was stronger than the players assigned to punish him. The 1,957 national championship game against North Carolina showed the strange burden he carried. That game went through 3 overtimes before Kansas lost 54-53. North Carolina packed bodies around him, denied him space, and made every touch a struggle. Yet Wilt was still named the most outstanding player of the tournament. That told me something important. Even when a team succeeded in keeping his scoring below the impossible standard, people expected his presence still dictated every decision. He changed spacing before the ball was passed. He changed shot selection before a guard entered the lane. He changed how coaches used fouls, substitutions, and timeouts. I have always believed that true greatness is revealed when the other team must abandon its ordinary identity just to survive. Wilt forced that response nearly every night. Now, I was never a coach who ignored winning. Statistics could impress me, but championships settled arguments. Kansas did not win the NCAA title during Wilt's varsity career, and that fact kept me from placing him at the very top. It would be unfair to blame one young man for every result, especially when opponents built entire defenses to stop him, but the final measure of college basketball still includes what a team accomplished together. Even so, no one should mistake that judgment for criticism of Wilt's ability. He may have been the most extraordinary physical talent I ever saw in a college uniform. He made strong players look small and fast players look ordinary. He made coaches feel clever for limiting him to a performance that would have been remarkable for anyone else. I rank him fourth because the 3 men ahead of him combined individual dominance with a greater measure of team achievement. But Wilt taught every coach an uncomfortable lesson. A blackboard can hold many fine ideas, yet when a talent that large walks onto the floor, strategy suddenly becomes very small and every ordinary rule begins to bend around his presence. The next college player I have to talk about is Oscar Robertson. I watched many great guards in my years on the sideline, but Oscar was different because he never seemed confined by the position people gave him. He was listed as a guard, yet he rebounded like a forward, handled the ball like a point man, scored like a pure shooter, and saw the floor with the calm of a veteran coach. At Cincinnati, he could take over a game without appearing rushed. He understood when to attack, when to pass, when to slow the pace, and when to punish a defense before it had time to settle. That kind of command is rare in any era. Oscar played 3 varsity seasons from 1,957 through 1,960, and he led the nation in scoring each year. He averaged nearly 34 points for his college career, won National Player of the Year honors 3 times, and carried Cincinnati to 2 Final Fours. Those figures were remarkable, but numbers alone do not explain why coaches feared him. The real problem was that he had no obvious weakness to direct your defense toward. If I assigned a smaller guard, Oscar used his strength and size. If I put a larger man on him, he beat him with quickness and control. If we crowded him with help, he found the open teammate before the second defender had fully arrived. He never looked surprised by a defensive adjustment. He simply studied it for a possession or two, then found the answer. I respected that intelligence, because basketball at the highest level is a contest of decisions before it becomes a contest of movement. Oscar usually made the right decision first. He also carried burdens that many players around him did not have to carry. He competed in an America that did not treat him fairly, and he entered buildings where his ability was admired while his dignity was not always respected. A man who plays under that pressure must develop a strength that no box score can measure. I would be dishonest if I ignored that part of his greatness. He had to defeat opponents on the floor while also enduring conditions that should never have been placed on any young athlete. Yet, he remained composed, demanding, and complete. Cincinnati did not win the NCAA championship while Oscar was there, and because I spent my life measuring teams by championships that matters in this ranking. Still, I would never claim that failure belonged to him alone. A title depends on timing, depth, health, matchups, and many things beyond one player's control. Oscar gave Cincinnati everything a college player could reasonably give. He controlled the ball, the score, the pace, and often the emotional direction of the night. I rank him third because the two men ahead of him changed winning at the championship level in even deeper ways. But Oscar Robertson may have been the most complete college guard I ever saw. He did not merely participate in the game. He organized it, shaped it, and made 9 other players respond to choices he had already made. That was precisely why, whenever his name appeared on a scouting report, a coach understood he was not preparing for one scorer, but for an entire basketball system. The next college player I have to talk about is Bill Russell. I had seen dominant scorers, powerful centers, and gifted athletes before Russell arrived at San Francisco, but that was what made him different. Russell could influence 5 possessions in a row without taking a shot. He blocked attempts, altered others, swept rebounds away from traffic, and started fast breaks with passes that reached teammates before the defense had recovered. Most players blocked a shot to make the crowd roar. Russell blocked it with a purpose. He often kept the ball in play, directing it toward a teammate and turning defense into offense in one motion. That was intelligent basketball, and I respected intelligence as much as talent. He changed how opponents approached the basket. A guard might beat his man enter the lane, and then hesitate because Russell was waiting. That hesitation was as valuable as a block. Once doubt entered a player's mind, Russell had already won part of the possession. At San Francisco, he led the Dons to national championships in 1955 and 1956, and they put together a 55-game winning streak. That record told me more than any scoring average could. Russell's greatness produced victory after victory because every part of his game served the team. He rebounded, defended, communicated, covered mistakes, and accepted that he did not need to be the leading scorer to be the most important man on the floor. Coaches dream about players who understand that distinction. A team needs a player who makes every teammate more secure, and Russell gave San Francisco that certainty whenever he stepped onto court. He was also quicker than most centers people had seen. He could move from one side of the lane to the other, recover after challenging a shot, and leap again before anyone else had gathered himself. You could not simply pull him away from the basket and assume the problem was solved. He read angles, anticipated passes, and seemed to know where the ball would arrive before the shooter did. Russell also endured pressures beyond basketball. He played in a country that often judged him by the color of his skin before recognizing the quality of his character or the brilliance of his game. That required a strength deeper than muscle. I do not believe any honest evaluation of him can separate his performance from the hostility he faced. He carried himself with pride and purpose, and he refused to let that hostility decide who he would become. I place Russell second because the man above him combined championship success with a wider range of offensive dominance. But no one on this list understood winning more clearly than Russell. He proved that defense could be the center of a great team, not merely the part played between scoring possessions. He did not need to dominate the ball because he dominated the choices available to everyone else. When Russell stood near the basket, opponents changed their shots, their timing, and sometimes their confidence. That is a rare kind of control, and it is why I consider Bill Russell one of the greatest college players I ever saw. And the greatest college basketball player I ever saw was Lew Alcindor. By the time he reached UCLA, I had already watched George Mikan, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, and nearly every kind of great player the college game had produced. But Alcindor brought together qualities I had rarely seen in one young man. He had Wilt's size, Russell's defensive reach, West's composure, and Oscar's understanding of the floor. More importantly, He had the discipline to place all of that talent inside a winning system. From the 1966-67 season through 1968-69, UCLA went 88-2 with Alcindor on the varsity team and won 3 straight NCAA championships. He was named the most outstanding player of the Final Four in all 3 seasons. I have always believed that greatness becomes difficult to argue with when it repeats itself under pressure, and Alcindor repeated it every spring. He did not simply overwhelm smaller players. His footwork was patient, his hands were reliable, and his balance allowed him to finish without rushing. He could receive the ball, turn over either shoulder, score softly, or find a teammate when the defense collapsed. Around the basket, he made defenders feel as though they were arriving late before the play had even begun. On defense, he erased mistakes. A guard could lose his man, and Alcindor could still recover, challenge the shot, and control the rebound. What impressed me most was that he never played as though his size excused him from learning the game. Under John Wooden, he ran the offense, made the proper pass, held his position, and accepted the discipline expected from every other player. A lesser star might have demanded that the entire system bend around him. Alcindor made the system stronger. When the dunk was prohibited in college basketball beginning in 1967, many people believed the rule was intended to reduce his advantage. I saw it differently. The rule only revealed how complete he could become. Instead of complaining, he refined his hook shot, improved his touch, and made his footwork even more difficult to defend. That is what truly great players do when the game places an obstacle in front of them. They do not shrink. They develop another weapon. I place him above Russell because he combined championship defense with a broader offensive game. I place him above Oscar and West because he controlled both ends of the floor. I place him above Wilt because his individual dominance was matched by perfect team results. 3 varsity seasons, 3 national championships, and only 2 defeats leave very little room for argument. He faced the expectations of an entire nation every evening, yet he remained controlled, economical, and dependable. There was no wasted movement and very little wasted effort in the way he approached winning at the highest level. If I had been asked to choose one college player for one season, with everything depending on that choice, I would have chosen Alcindor. I might not have enjoyed preparing against him, but I would have respected the precision of everything he did. I saw many gifted men in college basketball, but Lew Alcindor was the one who made domination look less like a performance and more like a duty completed correctly every single night. When I look back on those 5 players, I do not see the same kind of greatness repeated 5 times. I see 5 different answers to the same question. Jerry West showed me what skill and competitive nerve looked like when a game became tight. Wilt Chamberlain showed me that one player could force an entire sport to reconsider its physical limits. Oscar Robertson showed me that a guard could control every part of a game without ever appearing hurried. Bill Russell showed me that defense, sacrifice, and intelligence could become the foundation of a championship dynasty. Lew Alcindor showed me what happened when size, discipline, skill, and winning all came together in one young man. I am not ranking what they later became in the professional game. I am judging what I saw in college gyms, in tournament pressure, and in the moments when coaches had no easy answer. Different eras had different rules, different travel, different facilities, and different expectations. So comparisons will never be perfect. But greatness leaves the same mark in any generation. It changes preparation. It changes confidence. It changes what everyone else believes is possible. Trophies gather dust, records are broken, and old arguments return every few years. Yet a coach never forgets the feeling of seeing a player who made every plan look incomplete. I spent my life teaching young men how to win, but those 5 reminded me that every so often, the game produces a player no coach can fully explain.